Hi, I would like to talk about using Excel or Google Sheets to make your life easier. I know that working within programs like this have a pretty steep learning curve, but as you get used to them and learn them more and more and more, they can save you a lot of time in the long run. So today I'm going to focus on just how to save yourself time with the kinetics lab that we're doing in our Chemistry 162 class. So what you'll see on the page here is Excel. This is a downloaded version from Office 365, so a desktop version. The online Office 365 version of Excel is different. It's going to have fewer options, and while a lot of things might be the same, this set of example instructions might not apply. So I'm going to walk through this with Excel, and then I'm going to show you on Google Sheets just a few tips and tricks for doing calculations in Excel and creating a graph. So what you see here is some made up data. It's intended to look similar to the data that you are using in your lab. However, completely different. So what I've done is I've taken the information that I might have about a kinetics experiment, which is the reagents, which are going to be, and let's actually box this so it looks a little bit different. So my reagents I've put here, I've got 3 of them listed, and I know in our lab we had quite a few more. But this will still work as a demonstration. Potassium superoxide, an iron catalyst, and tetrahydrofuran. And I've listed underneath them the concentrations. And I'm going to point something out here right away. Below that, I have the volumes for 4 trials of kinetics experiments listed as well. And here you can see for the volume, I have just a number inputted, and the number shows up on the right-hand side of the box. And when I add the units after the concentration for, in this case, the superoxide solution, you'll see that it has everything justified to the left-hand side. Sorry, yeah, right for volume, left for the concentration. That's because I included the units with it. Once I introduce both a number and a letter, it's going to start treating this as something I've written rather than a number that can be used in a computation. So it's important to list your units with your description. So the concentration has units of molarity. So I don't need to have those units in my actual data box. And if I change it to just 0.1, now the number shifts to a left-hand justification, which indicates it's a number that could be used in a formula. If I have the M included, I'm not going to be able to have it use it in a calculation. So I'm going to go through and delete these molarities now that I've shown you that. So now it just looks like a bunch of numbers, which is exactly what we want. So I also have a column here for total volume. I've listed the volumes that I'm going to be using of each of these different compounds. I also then, for like an imaginary experiment that I did, I have the times as well, and then we can calculate the rate. So first, let's start with calculating the total volume. So what I'm going to do to kind of make this a little simpler so that way I don't get confused by this concentration data as something that's part of my volume, I'm going to do a few little tricks to visually differentiate it. I'm going to put a background behind it of a different color, and maybe I'll match that to my reagents. And maybe I'll give these borders so that way they kind of stand out as separate. And then I have my volume for each of my trials. I then merged these 2 cells so that way my volume will not look like I need to put something in this one right here in this empty box. Same with the time and same with the rate. I also like to have justification that's in the middle. And I know that what I'm doing now is giving you a tutorial on formatting, and I apologize. I will focus on the calculations now. Okay. So to calculate the total volume for each of these 4 trials, I'm going to do a calculation through Excel. So I'm going to hit equals, and that is going to trigger the formula function for Excel. I then want to take the sum of these 3 numbers, and Excel has tons of shortcut functions that you can use, and you can look them up in the question or how to function. There's a few that are really handy to know. Sum is a great one. So if I just put in sum, and I could, sorry, do it like this, and I can even just start typing it and then select it from a list that it's going to bring up. I can do it all capital. I can also put it in lowercase and it'll come out the same. I'm then going to put a parentheses. So that way I say we're going to do the function of summing, and then we're going to select a number of numbers that will be added together. And now I can come through and click individually the numbers I want to add, but I can also click, hold. So I've clicked, so let me rephrase it. I've left clicked down, held down, and I'm going to drag to highlight these 3 boxes. They're the 3 volumes of reagents that I will add into trial 1. Now I'm going to close parentheses to kind of finish that. Like, that's all the information that you have to worry about summing. I'm going to hit return. I get a number. Awesome. And 10 plus 10 plus 10 is 30. So we're like, it's working. So now I can go through and do that same process for the other trials, which is going to take some time. Or I can do the fill function. So what I'll do for this is I will now select the box that just had the calculation that I did, and you can see it right here in the function box. If you click on that though, hit return to get out. Otherwise, it'll just start. If you click on something else, it'll just add it into it and it'll get chaotic. But now I'm going to highlight that and the column of those 4 trials. So I've highlighted all the boxes that I would like that same calculation to take place. But I would like that calculation to take place for the numbers that are going to be below the ones above it. So I want this one right here to calculate the sum of these ones, and this one to calculate the sum of these. So if I actually fill down here without making any changes, Excel will assume that I want to take the sum of each row. So let's do that right now so you can see what it looks like. So on mine, I come here to this button right here with the arrow in the box, and I select which direction I want to fill. I want to apply the top box down to the other boxes below, so I'll choose fill down. You could also go to the right, you could go to the left, you could fill up, whatever you need to do. And each of these should sum up to 30, and I'm getting 30 for each. And if I come in and click on any one of these, I can see that it is looking at the 5th row. So each of these cells is characterized by the letter and the number of the column and row. And so to add 10 plus 5 plus 15, I need to add column B, row 5, that's number 10, to column C, row 5, that's number 5 here, to column D, row 5, that says 15. And so when you see something that says sum B5 to D5, B5 to D5 is these 3 numbers right here. And then if we look at the next one, it should say B6 to D6, and it does. If I wanted to tell Excel that, no, I want it to keep adding the same numbers to each other, no matter what, now I'll do a different one right here. Like, what if it's 4, 2, and 7? And oh, it's going to fill down automatically for me. Let's say now I want to take the sum of these numbers here. And I want to add to it some other number. Let's put this value here just to show this. I can do a function where I fill down and maintain the same number. So that way it doesn't take the number below for the next iteration. If I put a $sign in front of each, the letter and the number of the column and row, and that's going to have a fixed point addition there. So now if I have 3 more numbers here, when this adds it, it's going to add the 3 numbers that are in my B9 to D9 spots. And then it's adding F7 again, which is this number here, rather than the blank number, which would be F8. And so the $signs equals like a freeze function on that. All right, but we don't need to worry about that. Okay. So now we have our total volumes. Let's calculate the rate. So I have time here and I have total volume here. Um, and let's calculate the rate with respect to, uh, let's do K2O2 or KO2. So for that, I really need to know the concentration of my KO2, and I need to know the divided by the time. Right now, I know the concentration of the KO2 alone in its reagent bottle, but I don't know the concentration for the entire reaction mixture. So I'm going to use that formula that that M1 V1 equals M2 V2 to calculate that. And so I'm going to be focusing on calculating M2. So I'm going to rearrange my equation. So it's going to be M1 V1 divided by V2 is going to equal M2. Oops. So I have a formula here that's going to work great for getting my concentration, but I'm then also going to divide it by seconds. And so my rate, we'll do this, rate is going to equal that M2 divided by my time. And I have a choice. I can do this separately. I can create a new column and calculate my concentration, or I can calculate it all together. So let's start by creating a new column and concentrating and calculating that concentration. So I'm gonna put it next to the time. Well, yeah, let's do this. So I'm gonna hit insert and I get this new tab. I'm gonna merge these. And this is gonna be my concentration of KO2. So this is gonna be equal to M1 times V1. So that is concentration 1 times the volume of the trial right there. Oops. So I'm going to hit times. I'm going to use that little star symbol above the 8. That's going to be times rather than the X. And then I'm going to multiply that by the volume right here. And I'm going to end close parentheses. So that way it does that multiplication first. And then I'm going to divide, and I'm using the dash symbol, by the volume that is V2, which is the total volume. And so that's this value right here. Now, as I go through each of these trials, the volumes might change. And so I want the numbers to be able to change as well as I go down the rows. But that concentration, I need to stay the same, the initial concentration. If I fill down and I'm using this, it will automatically then go to the next one, which would be 10 instead of 0.1. So around that B3 value that I started with, I'm going to use those dollar symbols to freeze it. So that way, no matter what, I'm always using 0.1, even if I fill down. All right, I'm going to hit return, and there's the concentration of my superoxide. Excel will not do significant figures for you. Heads up. And for your lab report, you don't have to have in your tables perfect significant figures if you're using Excel, because you won't be able to do it. So now I'm going to highlight and I'm going to do that fill down trick. That's so nice. Great. And my KO2 concentration is staying the same through all of this. And then it's changing at the end. If I wanted to do this, let's say I was going to do the rate with respect to the iron catalyst too, then I would do a similar thing, but I would be looking at that iron concentration and iron volume instead. So this would equal my iron concentration times my volume and divided by my total volume. I'll come in and I will add a $ in front of the letter and number of the value that I want to stay the same as I then fill down. And I click that fill down function. And now I have the concentrations of my iron catalyst. I should stop calling it a catalyst. We'll call this an iron compound. And so I have those. Great. Now, Let's calculate the rate for CO or KO2 loss, right? So this is going to equal this value right here divided by our concentration divided by our time. And there we go. Now I don't need anything to stay the same because for each row I want to know how time changes as the concentration changes. So now that I've set that in place, I'm going to fill down again. And there are all my rates for my potassium oxide. And they're changing unlike those concentrations in the first three because the time was really different. I can do this for the rate for the iron as well with respect to the iron compound. And that is like here's a little formatting tip again. I'm going to select this. I'm going to get a center justification and I'm going to wrap the text so that way it all fits. Hit equals. And now for the iron, I want to know the concentration of the iron compound divided by the amount of time that the reaction took. There we go. And I'll fill down. And now I did all of those calculations once, and then I let Excel do it for me the rest of the time, which is really fantastic. Let's say that I wanted to now graph something. So we are going to have our x-axis always on the left-hand side of the y-axis when we graph in Excel, and the temperature is our independent variable. That'll be on our x-axis. Our rate constant will be on the y-axis because it'll be dependent on the temperature. It'll change as we change the temperature. So it's our dependent variable. I'm just going to throw in some values here because I'm just going to make them up. Okay, I'm going to make up some K values as well. Oh. Okay. So to do a quick graph for this, I'm going to highlight my data that I would like to plot. I am going to head over to the tab at the top that says data. And I am going to, or sorry, not data, insert. And I'm going to insert a chart. So you might have a chart drop down. So here's the chart menu here. You can even pull this out and see more detail. But I want to use a scatter plot, which is represented by the dots. And I do not want to necessarily have a line connecting that data. I would like to decide myself how to do that. So I'm going to just click the dots like this, and it's going to generate a chart automatically. I'm going to bring that down here. Okay, now I have a data. I can come in here and change my title. So we can say activation energy of the potassium of whatever, making stuff up. It'll kind of automatically do that. Let's move this down here a bit. I can add a trend line here by, I'm left clicking on one of my data points and that highlights them all. And then when I do that, I can go ahead and I'm gonna left click. I'm gonna add a trend line and I can make it be linear or I can make it exponential, do that. And I'll scroll down and we really need to make sure we display the equation. It's important. There we go. Got an equation. And if you're looking at linear, you would do the linear one. And I can add in axis titles. That's going to be key. So I'll come in here and explain what my axis is. So here it's temperature. And I'll put in parentheses the units. And on this side, it's the rate constant. And its units will be dependent on the overall order. I'm just going to put in some random units here, but they'll be order dependent. So you'll have to determine that in your lab. Got a beautiful graph now. Yay. And so that's how I would do that here in using Excel on the download version. which all students should have access to with their Office 365. You have a number of downloads, and it's quite a few. So you can download it onto your laptop or your desktop if you have one. You can also use the computers in the library. If you're using a Chromebook, you will not be able to download the Office 365 version of Excel onto the desktop. Heads up. So you'll want to shift and use either the online version or you'll want to use Google Sheets. Let's look at Google Sheets. Here we go. So we have the same thing that we started with before. And we have, let's highlight, I'll make a few adjustments. I'm going to make a few formatting changes really quick. Okay, I did some formatting. Now I'm going to go through and do what I did on the other one, only here we're working in Google Sheets. So first I'm going to make sure that all the values that I actually want to work with do not have any units associated with them in the actual cell. Great. Now I'm going to calculate my total volume. It's going to be really similar to working in Excel. So I'm going to put in sum, and it's Google, so it's going to auto-suggest for me that I highlight those three numbers next to it. So I can do that if I want, or I can type in equals sum, parentheses, and then come in, left click and drag to highlight those three values, and end parentheses and click that. So now let's do filling would be nice. And if you look around in this, you're not going to have it. So you're going to have to do a copy paste for this instead. So without that highlight and fill down, I'm going to have to come in here and hit equals, but Google's at least being smart about this and offering something for me each time. And so if I click the suggestion, then I'll be able to use it and it'll automatically kind of do the fill work. So it's just a bit more typing. I can also hit equals, and instead of selecting with my mouse cursor, I could just hit return, and it's going to take its suggestion and do it. When I hit return again, it's going to bring it back up, and I hit return one more time, and then I can go down to the next one. So it's like 3 returns. So it's like equal, return, 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 equal, return, 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 which doesn't make any sense because what is it actually taking the sum of? It's taking the sum of nothing, and it's interpreting that as 120. So that's always interesting. Anyway, but I can confirm visually that 30 is the correct number for each of these values right here. And I can look at the function, and it's using the letters and the numbers in the same way to say which cells we're working with. All right, so let's take the concentration of iron this time instead of both iron and superoxide. So I'm going to input the formula that I determined for the Excel sheet. So I'm going to hit equals to get myself into that function. I'm going to hit my parentheses. I'm going to select the concentration, and then I'm going to use the Shift 8, which is the star key, and multiply that by the volume. Close parentheses. So now I'm multiplying the initial concentration by the initial volume. I'm going to hit divide and select the total volume and hit return. Fantastic. So it's going to suggest an autofill for the rest, and I can select it or not. However, I'm concerned that it is going to go down to E4. So this isn't going to work as I have it written. If I came in here and instead now put in a $sign around the C, and then also the 3 to fix that value, then if it auto suggests it, which it's not doing. Oh, nope. Yeah, so now it's going to auto suggest it the way it did before with my 3 clicks. And you see when it does this, it's showing you which ones it's using, and you can see that we're keeping that concentration fixed while we're choosing values going down the rows. All right, so let's calculate rate. So my rate is going to be equal to my concentration divided by my time. Hit return. This time I'm going to take the autofill suggestion because I know that I want everything to change as it goes down, and I wrote it correctly. So I'll hit click, and then it does autofill. So that's kind of a new feature. It used to not do that. Wonderful. They made it slightly better. That's it. So that's Google Sheets helping me do my formulas. I'm going to grab the values that we use right here and input those into my Excel sheet so we can look at, there we go. So here are the values that I want to practice graphing in Google Sheets. So again, I'm going to select my data that I'm interested in using. And I am either going to go to Insert, Chart, or I can select this icon right here that's a little square with 3 lines that looks like a chart. And it added a bar chart. So if you don't think about it too much and you just do it, it's going to work out kind of terrible. So we need to come in here and select the chart type. And we want to make sure that we're choosing a scatter plot. And so we have to do a bit of scrolling to get there. But there we go. We've got a scatter plot. Fantastic. It's giving me a data range, so I can always change that if there was a value that I didn't want to include. I've got an x-axis, which it says is T temperature. I wonder if it'll let me customize it. Nope, cancel. I can add a series if I want to add multiple graphs on the same one. Let's see what customize lets us do. Let's do the chart axis and titles. My chart title is going to be kinetic chart title. Kinetics of iron compound decomposition. Something like that, right? Great. Let's pick my horizontal axis. So that says T right now, so let's write out temperature. See how hard it is to spell temperature. And make sure in parentheses you're putting your units. Great. And let's also do our vertical axis. And these are all just in the chart editor options that automatically pop up. This is going to be rate constant. Okay. And I'm just making up units. Again, these are dependent on the overall order of the reaction. Great. Okay, so I'm going to double click on the chart to add the trend line. And under customize, I'm going to select series. That's where the trend line option is going to be. I can do a few things here, like change the color of it or the circle size, where the axes are. But I can also add a trend line right here. I could choose linear or I could choose exponential. And I should be able to show an equation automatically on there. Let's see. So back to the series component, we'll come back down to our trend line, exponential line color, fantastic. Show R2. Oh, that's the R value. That's not what we want. Label, use equation. There we go. And now it's showing the equation for that line. All right, so now we've been able to do everything in Google Sheets and we've been able to do everything in Excel. Hopefully this is helpful as you are working on your data analysis for Lab 3. Please let me know if you run into any questions along the way.